Well, good morning and welcome to another Saturday edition of Mothers Against Addiction's weekly guest speaking engagement. My name is Cassie King. I'm going to serve as the moderator today. If you are new to Mothers Against Addiction, we're really glad that you're here. If you've been here before, welcome back. For those of you who are less familiar with us, Mothers Against Addiction is a global nonprofit organization seeking to create community, primarily focused on supporting the unique needs of mothers that are impacted by addiction. We believe that mothers are the driving force of the family unit. So, of course, we extend that support to all parents, all family members that are impacted by addiction in any way. Our weekly guest speaking engagements such as this are always open to anyone and will continue to be free of charge, as are all the resources that we aim to support and provide the community with. Before we launch into introducing our guest speaker today, just want to pass along a few reminders to the group. We value everyone's confidentiality, so we will be recording the session today and posting it on our website. As you can see, our speaker, myself as the moderator, are pinned in the middle of this morning. So if you guys have any questions, I will have an opportunity at the end to open questions for the group. You are welcome to type your question in the chat or use the raise your hand function, and we'll let you unmute so you can speak out loud your question. Should you choose to speak, your voice will be recorded, but not your face, to help preserve some of that comfortable, welcoming environment for everyone's confidentiality. But without further ado, I do want to get right into our guest speaking engagement today. Today we have Derrick Moore with us. He is a product of East Anchorage, Alaska, a first-time author, also known as Hardaway Learning. He grew up a prominent high school athlete with a 4.0 GPA before he made some mistakes, bad decisions, and kind of those losses derailed his life, sapped some of his potential as he entered into adulthood. Prison and drug addiction were the result. But now he is on the other side of 4.5 years clean and sober. He's turned his life around and has established himself as a voice within the drug addiction recovery community. He's got a growing social media presence. He does a lot of speaking engagements. He aims to spread motivation, inspiration, and knowledge, all gained from hard-learned lessons. He's made it his life mission to help those who are struggling. Welcome this morning, Derrick. We're really excited to have you. Can you just start off by sort of telling us a little bit about yourself?
So, what you gave just there was like the quick bio. That's really my standard bio that I like to give to people, and that's kind of like the outline of my life and how it went. And I always like to involve the before the trouble, then, during, and I also like to include my potential, and then what the result of some of those mistakes that I began to make started happening and what they caused. And there's no avoiding it for me. And it was addiction and, of course, prison. So those two things were were my the peak of my negative consequences. And we're sitting here talking about addiction, and prison was one of those results. And, I can't avoid it. It's really part of my story. But growing up, in East Anchorage, Alaska, growing up, I didn't have when I look back, I had every chance to succeed that any kid could ask for: a roof over my head, food, clothing. I didn't grow up with any adverse conditions. Of course, we weren't rich or anything, definitely lower class, but, coming into high school, I had every chance to succeed. I had ability. I had a 4.0, that freshman year, I had a 4.0. I started to grow a little taller. I started getting good at sports. You just look at that on a base level, and this guy has a lot of talent playing sports, and he's smart. So you just look at that and you think, man, he has a lot of potential. And I didn't have a lot of potential. And around that sophomore year was when, I started to, I was really insecure. I was kind of socially awkward. I was shy. Of course, at that age, you're not really aware of it, but these are insecurities, right? And that sophomore year is when I started to get a little bit more made the varsity team, got a little bit more popular, started gaining some friends, and I started to come out my shell a little bit. So I cut the dorky afro. I switched the types of clothes I was wearing, and I started to get a little bit out of alignment with that kid that I grew up that was focused on the grades and the sports. And I started to focus on the other things like the popularity, the partying. And around that junior year, here we come around junior year, and now I'm the best player in the state. And I'm the big man on campus now. And I'm getting college looks for sports and stuff like that. And I started getting more popular. So I started hanging out with the popular crowd, and guess what the popular crowd likes to do? They like to party. They like to drink. And in high school, I didn't think nothing of it. You don't really think anything of it. It's kind of the process, the maturation process of growing up, taking risks. And I thought I was doing the same. I was just living the way that everyone else was living. And I remember the first drink that I took was at 17. And I remember feeling like, dang, that overthinking, it was gone. That charisma kind of got a little boost, a little more free spirit. And I wasn't aware, but I kind of got a little bit attached to that feeling of not being sober. And it kind of added a little bit of swagger to my personality that I may not have had when I was sober. So I kind of started to take a liking to, being in a different skin, so to speak. Like it added a little bit of a characteristic traits that I did not possess when I was sober. And I kind of took a liking to that feeling of not being sober. And I also started to develop this ego. Like I started to get this arrogance, this ego, and it was fueled by my sports. But really what happens when you're operating out of an ego is like you're constantly falling out of alignment with like who you truly are. And that's what I was doing constantly. So somewhere along the line, I got this fascination with being that street guy, the tough guy, the hustler. So I started dabbling in a little street activity too. Meanwhile, I got college scholarships on the table to go play sports, but something about my distraction and the influence from the streets just captivated me. And so meanwhile, around the senior year, when my drinking started picking up, I never got any worse at sports, but I started drinking more. I started hanging out with the street guys and started hustling a little bit on the side. And when you fall that far out of alignment with who you truly are, you can only expect bad consequences. And, that senior year, while riding around with a kid that I had just met him a week before, I just had got kicked off the basketball team for getting in a fight during the game. Now I was one of the best basketball players and football players. Football season was over. I got kicked off the basketball team for getting in a fight during a game. So there's no more basketball practice, no more basketball games. And I'm riding around with a guy, man, and he's just riding around with me. Just met him. He just moved from Florida. And one day we're riding around 3 a.m. and he jumps out the car and he ends up robbing some dude for $6. And he gets back in the car and we're riding around. I didn't even get out the car or anything. And I'm so naive at this point that, I didn't think nothing of it. And about 10 minutes later, 10 police officers end up swarming us, lock us up. I was the only 18-year-old. And then I see my face all over the news, East basketball star, $6 bandit. And I ended up getting expelled from school, lost all my scholarships. That was the first time I ever been to jail. I got put on house arrest, and there short after I became an alcoholic. I took that drinking to the next level, ended up drinking, for every single day till I was blacked out, for 4 straight months. And ever since that birth of the real true alcoholism, every single day after that until age 32, every single day of that 14-year span, I spent as either an alcoholic, a drug addict, or an inmate. And that was the beginning of that was really the beginning of the end, so to speak, was all those bad decisions that I started to stack up and add, and the bad thoughts, and just the culmination of it continued to, progress to the point where, you know, I became an addict, a felon, expelled from school, lost all my scholarships, all within the span of the year. And when I lost all my athletic future, I had no purpose. I had no direction. And that's really when I leaned into the streets. And without any direction, I was willing to try other drugs, other substances, and pretty much everyone that I tried after that, 19, 20, 21, I ended up getting addicted to. So age 19, I got addicted to cocaine. Age 23, got addicted to heroin and meth. And I was experimenting with ecstasy, and during this entire period was going in and out of jail. So from ages 18 to 32, every single day, every single hour, every single minute of that 14-year span, I was either a drug addict, an alcoholic, or an inmate until now, which is, I'm 34 now. So that was 32. That was 18 to 32. I'm 34 now. And these are the first 2 years in my entire adult life. Not one drink, not one drug, not one day in jail. That's full calendars where I did neither of those three. And, that's my new favorite stat to tell.
That's a beautiful stat. Congratulations on your recovery. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you faced during these last 2 years, this journey, coming to the other side of your addiction?
So during these last 2 years, the biggest challenges? Well, the biggest challenge, and I know this to be fact for other people as well that are struggling with had struggled with addiction and now are sober, is that, you become hyper aware now of your negative emotions, whatever it can be, frustration, stress, unfulfillment, overthinking, your insecurities. So all these things that these substances are very good, very effective at masking. They are very effective emotional suppressants, every one of them. And that's a lot of the times, I know for me personally, that's what got me addicted to them was, covering up that loss of self-esteem, that confidence I was losing when I was the best player in the state. Now I'm just, working minimum wage job, just trying to, like, all these things were chipping away at my ego, were, chipping away at my confidence at the same time. And the substances help mask those. Now, when you're in your sobriety, now you don't have that. And when you're someone like me who has been an alcoholic and a drug addict, there's no drinking for me either. So there's no relief to that. So you have to figure out how to cope with the stress, cope with the negative emotions, and in the process of being in the middle of them, because you're just so aware of them, you're in tune with all your senses because you're in your right mind. So that's obvious. That's definitely the toughest part, is dealing with those negative emotions. And the only way to do it is really to work through them and find new ways to grow out of them and cope with them, which glimmer of hope is that we all have that capability. And that's what I try to motivate people to do. We actually have the capability to overcome what we're dealing with, whether it be addiction or whether it be some trauma, childhood trauma, some insecurities. We can learn how to cope with them and grow out of them. And that's what I had to do before I started overcoming my addiction. I had to learn how to become a better person. But that's definitely the biggest challenge, is your awareness is heightened because it's not numbed by these substances. So you got to find a way to cope with them.
So it takes a lot of strength to get through some of those really tough moments. Where do you look to or turn to for that strength, or what resources have you utilized to help you maintain your sobriety?
So my my journey is a little different. I won't say too different. It's just what did it for me is personal growth and self-development. So that's on the front of my book. And I think it's one of those things that are one of those aspects of recovery that I wish was more integrated in it. And what I mean by that, personal growth and self-development. So I've been to a treatment, I had took a treatment course before. The problem with it was, so it was, they were giving the information and it was coming from somebody, and I wasn't paying that much attention. Now, that's not a good thing. We understand that, that's not a good thing. But what happened is after that, I was still not getting it together. And I started reading books, right? I started reading books, and I'm sitting here reading the books, and one of the practices that changed my life was a core value list practice, one of my favorite practices of all time. I'm sitting here reading the book, and it has the core value list practice, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds cool. And I go out and I start doing it, I start trying it, and it's working for me. I'm being kind, I'm being generous. And then I think a little bit back, and I'm like, man, this same practice was in that treatment journal. So all it was a different vantage point that the information was coming from. But the thing about with personal growth and self-development, nobody can tell you that you're doing it wrong. So you're much more likely to be receptive to it and to, retain the information because you're diagnosing it from your own intellect. And so what I was getting at is that personal growth and self-development is really how I do it, whether that's exercise, yoga, reading books, journaling, gratitude journal, meditation, visualization, breath work, fasting, diet change, all these aspects of improving your health and your mental capacity that everyone talks about, billionaires and millionaires, CEO 500, this is cold plunges and all this stuff. I added that to my sobriety, and it really helps me maintain my sobriety, finding new ways to grow. That's when I get to talk to people that are struggling, and even some of the stuff that I have coming out, even my book is is mostly about that. It's really about finding what works best for you. And then I never try to stray people away from getting professional help or, the NA groups, 12-step, those things really help. I'm a huge supporter in that. For me, the way that worked for me was finding my own ways to grow, learning, plus during the process you're learning. And that's something that people forget that they can do when they're in addiction.
I think what you're saying really points to people's unique approach and finding that vantage point for that information. Like you said, sometimes you can get the best tools in the world, the best advice, and it has to hit you in the right way at the right time and be open to it. It sounds like you've really found that for yourself. For those that may be still struggling with their own addiction or are supporting a loved one through their addiction, do you have any advice or tips for them on kind of words of encouragement or practical advice?
Yeah, so the two would be different sets of advice, and I can give a quick word of encouragement for both, for both situations. My number one, advice to somebody that's in active addiction is do not ever underestimate the small steps, like progressive steps towards it. And what I mean by that is sometimes when I was in addiction, I used to just wake up, right? Or I wouldn't have no money or whatever the case is. I sit there and I'll be like, all right, I'm quitting right now. I'm done today. I'm sitting here watching it, hour, 2 hours. I'll just do it tomorrow. And, tomorrow never came. And that's because I was relying so much on discipline, mental toughness. Well, at the point, I didn't have any. So I'm trying to muster up this mythical level of discipline and self-control that I just did not have. In fact, it was much worse than it was before the addiction, obviously. So, and that's how a lot of people want to do it. That's how a lot of people try to do it. And it puts a huge gap that you have to jump over. And if you fall in the gap, it's a just complete discouragement, and it has the opposite effect. And now you're thinking, man, I really can't do this. So you're discouraging yourself, and you're actually heading in the wrong direction. So sometimes and it might not be clinically, accurate, and I always mention I'm not a medical professional, but I encourage people in the moment, in the act of addiction, if you can start to take steps towards it, regardless, it doesn't have to be something huge. I started moving towards getting sober during my addiction by reading books. I was reading books while I was still using it. But I completely stand by the fact that I know that I retained some of that information, and in the moment, I felt like I was changing. And that's sometimes you just got to get a little bit of improvement. So I don't ever want people to think that they can't start improving, even if they're in the middle of their active addiction. There's always steps that you can take. It's about infusing those positives just to counterbalance the negative ones. You're still going to be getting them as long as you're in substance abuse. But if we can start adding some positive gain in there, it could be anything. A 20-minute walk every day, reading a book for 20 minutes. I know how addiction is. It's sometimes people are non-functioning and stuff like that. So it is a tall task to ask. But if they can muster up some energy just to get some steps in the right direction, I know it'll pay dividends. It won't feel like it, but you'll be moving towards your sobriety, even if you're not sober right now. And so I just don't ever want them to underestimate the progress that they can make in active addiction today, right now. And for someone who's trying to support a loved one that's struggling with addiction, those are the two common questions I get through my social media following. It's that, how did you do it? And how can I help my son or daughter? Those are the two questions right there. And it's all, I'll be honest with you. I read and I try to give personal, like, specific advice to what they're going through, but it usually comes back to one of the same points. And that's like, at the very onset, you have to focus on rebuilding the relationship. And what I mean by that is a mother to son, a mother to mother, or a mother to daughter relationship. The reason I say this is because I had a relationship like that with my brother. My younger brother was that one person for me. He never treated me like anything other than his older brother. And, when I'm sitting here trying to bounce back and get my life together, it was always that relationship that was in the back of my mind. That was like my motivation to try to overcome this and be back part of his life. Now, everyone else lost friends, everything, tragedy, it was, the whole nine. But I had this one relationship, this one source of, love, this one, man that I could get this human interaction with. I didn't have to worry about being pressured or asked to change or whatever. And so I always had that relationship with my younger brother, and that was my one rock through my addiction years. And the reason why that's important is because if you can rebuild the relationship, just on a human to human, mother to son, mother to daughter relationship, and focus just solely on that, it's going to add the human element back into the person that's struggling with addiction in life. You got to understand that most of the time right now, they're dealing with their dealers, their acquaintances who are getting high. So this is the world that they're living in now. And when you repair the relationship and rebuild the relationship just on a solid foundation of whatever the person is to you, son, daughter, brother, sister. It actually builds trust and credibility, and it brings down the defensive walls. That defensive wall is such an impossible thing to get over sometimes when they're getting critiqued and hounded and asked to change. Then they get defensive, and now they got a reason or somebody to blame to keep using. So it's hard to get past that defensive wall. So I always advise people to just, focus on rebuilding the relationship first. And you might be surprised. As soon as they feel like they're not being attacked or they're not being pressured or whatever, you just take them out to eat and they're just hanging out, and they're like, you'd be surprised of how, they might even suggest that they want help. But that's always my very first piece of advice is to rebuild the relationship.
That's a great point. We have a lot of mothers that reach out to us that are wanting to be able to rebuild that relationship. So I think that that's a great reminder. One of the other points of feedback we get a lot from mothers is that sense of feeling isolated or hopeless during the battle of their addiction, or even watching their loved one in the middle of addiction. Do you have any words for how they can start that healing process and feeling even just a little bit less isolated, less hopeless about the situation that they're in?
Yeah, so it's definitely a tough situation to be in, because trust me, I've dealt with parents who I've gave all my best advice to, everything I could say, everything I could think of to say, and they just say, I've tried that, it don't work, and it just gets to that point where they feel like they're hopeless. And it's a very tough place to be in. It's a shoes that I have not been in myself, being on the other side of it. I can only imagine how my mom felt during this time. I can only imagine how my brother felt watching it. And it has to feel like a hopeless situation. But I'll tell you one thing that really stuck out to me so profoundly, right? And it's with my brother, right? And he said, after I got out and I'm clean, and it took a few months for him to see me sober and be out and not drink and things like that. And he was like, man, he's back. I'm back. And we end up having a conversation, right? And he said, bro, I never believed that he said he never believed that I was like getting high, pretty much. Like he didn't want to believe it. And I'm not saying be naive and oblivious. What I'm saying is, like, he always had this vision of me, his older brother, dunking basketballs, doing this and that. He always believed that I was going to be that person again. He never stopped believing that I had that in me. Like, and he told me, he said, I always knew you were going to bounce back. Like, I knew, he said he didn't want to believe it, but, obviously it was obvious, but he said, I always knew you were going to do it. Like, he always had that belief, like, and I know that it affected how he treated me during those times. And when, the advice I could give is you just, if the hope is not there, which hope is, it's a future-based emotion. Like, right now, the optimism is not there, but at the ground level, you have to still keep that belief, that vision of sobriety for them, like, in your mind. Don't ever lose that and think that it's too late. And that is, you can create that with your imagination. Don't ever stop thinking of seeing them living a fulfilling life. That vision of sobriety for them, even if they don't have it for themselves, is very, very important for someone to have it. Somebody has to have a vision of sobriety, and you can have it before them. And once they get it, then they can start moving towards it. But at the very base level, that vision of sobriety has to exist in the universe somewhere. And as far as somebody supporting them, or a mother or father supporting a loved one that's struggling with addiction, that's where I would say it might be looking tough. Every situation is different. So if it's hopeless for them, it's hopeless for somebody else, and it's something's different and more drastic when you're sitting in your own shoes. But just don't ever lose that vision of sobriety. Like, keep that hope, like keep that belief that recovery is possible, like it was for me, like it can be for them.
Absolutely. I'm starting to see some questions in the chat, and I think that addresses some of the ones that have already been popped in there. I do see a few more coming in, so we'll go ahead and shift to the question and answer portion for our listeners. One question that has come up in the chat is, what trade do you work with in construction? And congratulations on your sobriety and freedom. You've come a long way. Look forward to reading your book and one you will write in the future.
Yeah, so right now I'm doing construction. I'm doing concrete labor. So it's like, man, it's like the hard, like, it's just physically demanding, but it keep me in shape. So, but that was another game changer for me as far as my sobriety, was like finding good employment, being able to keep it, and getting to a place financially where, like I was mentioning earlier in our pre-meeting, that I take the winter off. So, and I do get involved in the community, write a book. This winter is what I'm going to do. And so that's another key to the sobriety, is finding good employment. I really believe in that. So concrete labor, though, you ain't finding too many harder than that. But I'm out there. That's how I got the job. I told them I'm in shape. Let me get the job.
Absolutely. We have a question from Eva in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself, you can ask it.
Hi, Derrick. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your sobriety and everything you do for our communities. My question was, if you were to pick 3 things, or maybe the one thing you decided to do the day you said, okay, I'm going to free my life, I'm going to get out of addiction, what are those things? And do you still maintain them? Is this your mantra? Is this a routine for yourself?
Yes. Yeah. So these are the 3 steps. These were the 3 steps for me. Right. And I, at the very beginning of my journey, right, whatever, this was probably the biggest blessing ever as well, because it's, when I picked up that very first book, somebody yelled at me, said, bro, I don't want to deal with your negativity right now. I've always been a negative person my whole life, straight negative, no optimism, pessimistic, just all that stuff. Okay, nothing to do with addiction, but do you think that was helping me overcome my addiction? No, it was not. But somebody, you're so negative, bro. Like, and I'm like, hey man, I don't want to be the bad vibe, bro. I don't want to be the guy that's like negative. Like, that's not cool. So I'm still using. I said, let me try to change that, man. I don't want to be the bad vibe, right? So I pick up a book called Power of Positive Thinking. Still using, and I'm reading the book. I'm like, hey man, that makes sense. Reading it, read another sentence, highlight it. I'll read another paragraph. Some practice. All right, I'll try it. Why not? I ain't got nothing to lose. After a week, I'm like, damn, those things kind of work, man. Those things kind of work. Well, those were those plus ones, those little positive gains I was talking about earlier. That was it. Like, I'm like, dang, that kind of helps me, I should read another book. I'm still using it at the time. Start reading another book. It was called Unfuck Yourself. Now, the books aren't as important as the actual process of reading the book. Like, I hadn't probably read a book since high school. So what was I learning? I was learning how to be a better criminal, how to get away with a different crime, how to lie better. Those are the things I was working on. Like, and I sat down and I started to teach myself how to be a different person. That was the number one. That was the first step. And I did this while I was using still, was I started working on being a better person. It was reading books was my first step. And the second step was, I went through a withdrawal phase, and I just couldn't get the substance at the time. Right. And I was withdrawing, and I remember sitting down and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm 30 at the time. I'm like, dude, you got to get your stuff together, bro. Like, only you're going to do this, man. Like, I'm sitting here withdrawing. I'm thinking, like, bro, it's on you. You have no one to blame, man. Like, we're talking since 18 to 30. And I'm like, dude, it's on you, man. You have to figure this out. Like, you don't have no more excuses. You're running out of excuses, bro. And that was the first time that I, like, was upfront with myself. I was like, dude, it's on you, man. You can do this. But I accepted another part of it too. I accepted that, like, it almost got me, I'm thinking about it now. I remember thinking, like, I had to release some, like, bro, your life's not over, man. You're 30. Like, you can still do this. Like, you can still change. It was like an hour-long conversation. I remember sitting down, staring at the floor, and I was talking to myself for like an hour. All in all, my second step was just the acceptance that only I had the power to change this, and that it's not too late to change. Some people think it's too late. Some people think they blew it forever. That's how I used to think when I was 22. I thought, man, it's over now. I blew it. I'm old now. 22 years old. And so I had to release that guilt and that shame at 30. It's like, bro, you got a lot of life to live. And then my third step was, as I continued to read those books, around the fourth book, I made it through the withdrawal process. And I came around the fourth book. There was a David Goggins book. And and I'm sitting here reading it, and I'm getting the motivation to work out. And I started working out. A couple of weeks later, man, I started seeing, like, I lost 10 pounds. I'm like, wow. Actual work put in, sit on the scale, see the number decrease, tangible result. I'm like, wow, the work I put in really paid off, literally paid off. And that was a game changer for me. So those were my first three steps, was learning how to be a better person. I had to have an acceptance moment in there, and the fitness. And that was it for me. And those are, the acceptance moments. I don't know, maybe I should get some more acceptance moments in there, because they really changed me. But so as far as my daily routine, it's definitely, they are part of my daily routine. Got to work out. I work out about 7 days a week, depending on if I'm working, and I might take a Saturday off. But reading books, journaling, meditating, visualization, and working out, those are really how I maintain my sobriety.
We have another question that came through the chat. It says, thank you for sharing your story, Derrick. What was the turning point that made you decide to turn your life around?
A lot of people ask me that, and it's, it wasn't as much as a decision. Like, that's what I wanted. That's what I like to talk. I like to share my story, because I never really made that decision. Like, it never was like, today's the day. You know what I mean? It wasn't never really like that. Even when I was talking about the acceptance moment, I just couldn't get substances. Like, I had that moment, and I'm sure if I could have got it later that night, I probably would have did it. I just couldn't get to it. But I continued to take those steps, and then in about a month, I was like, damn, man, I'm feeling good. I was reading those books, positivity and working out. I'm like, damn, I'm feeling kind of good, man. And before you knew it, like that actual craving, that actually thought of wanting to look for it completely left my mind. And so it wasn't, I didn't bang the table and say, I'm done today. You know, I did that 1,000 times before. I failed every time. But what I did have though was an acknowledgement that I had to change somehow. Like I had to find a way. Now, I never made the decision and put it into action, but I had concrete proof that it just did not work. So around when I had a 22 to 25 heroin and meth addiction. Went to prison for a year, got out, relapsed in a week, and meth and heroin addiction every day for 2.5 more years. In that span, things changed from that first span that I was talking about, 22 to 23 to 25. Things changed a lot. I started to lose that confidence, like that belief that I would figure it out. Like that confidence started to wane a lot. And that's around the time when I started to become like, dude, I gotta change this. Like this is really that strong of a disease. It really is. And I never believed that. I never accepted that. I never humbled myself to that. So it was a progress of me humbling myself. It was progression of like humility that brought me to the point like, this just does not work, bro. It's not for me. So I had to really just humble myself. That was me getting the acknowledgement that prison addiction, that's all you got. And I had to find a way to change. And it was never like a decision, but I made steps towards it. And before I knew it, all that work, all those books, all that working out, I was overcoming my addiction. I just didn't know it.
Another question that has come through the chat. Is there any tips to help family that don't want help?
For family members that don't want help, that are struggling with addiction?
Yes.
That's the toughest, that's the toughest place to be in, is when they're steadfast in either not wanting help or just don't want to change. Not wanting to change is the hardest part. And that's a tough place to be. I'm not sure who has the answer for that, as far as when a person doesn't want to change. Now that's the most difficult part to be. But as far as somebody that doesn't want help, that's, if they don't want help, that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you still can't be a part of their life and not help them with their addiction. Now this takes a lot of aspects of like healthy boundaries. We're talking, coherence, if they even can, spend quality time. But there's still elements that you can still, that can still aid them in the recovery process, whether it's now or in a week or in a month or, whenever they're ready. And that's without actually helping them try to overcome their addiction. So sometimes they just don't want help. They don't want help because they don't want to feel like they're being attacked. So anytime you offer the help, I don't want your help. Well, instead of trying to help them, I'm not trying to help you. I just want to take you to get something to eat. Are you hungry? Like these little things add up in a different element, in a different aspect of their life, adding the human element back into their life. So if they don't want help, a good place to start is like, all right, well, you can try to repair the relationship and not even bring up a single thing about addiction. Well, then I won't help. But obviously in the back of your mind, you're waiting for an opportunity to help, but they don't know that. And that's essentially what you're trying to get that defensive wall down. So all right, well then I ain't trying to help you. I just want to spend some time with you. I just want to talk to you. I want to talk to you on the phone. I want to take you out to eat or whatever the case is. Really build a relationship like that. And in the back of your mind, you're just waiting for that defensive wall to come down into where they ask for help, or you feel like the relationship's repaired and the trust is built gradually. The trust has been built gradually to where you could offer help, or when the time is right. That would be a case by case scenario as far as when would be the right time to do that, because you don't want to, I knew you were trying to help me the whole time type situation. But yeah, I think repairing the relationship would be the best way to go. And if they don't want help, then they made it easy on you already as far as that. All right, I won't bring it up at all. I won't bring it up at all, and just try to repair the relationship from there.
As we're winding down today, are there any last departing words, advice that you wanted to give mothers or family members that may be impacted by addiction?
As I was mentioning before, that the number one thing is you have to. I remember when I started creating content about sobriety or addiction, and there was this hashtag, it said recovery is possible. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I just hashtagged it on all my videos. I'm hashtagging it, trying to go viral, do whatever. And a few months later, I sit back and I'm thinking like, bro, I like that. You know what I mean? Because sometimes in the middle of addiction, whether it's someone struggling or you have someone that you love that's struggling, it looks like it's this impossible feat. And that's how I used to look at my addiction. Like it was a mountain. I was going to have to take 1,000,000 steps. I already took 1,000,000 steps back. I'm like, this is not going to happen. Like it's impossible. And I always loved that hashtag when I started to think about it more deeply, that recovery on a basic level, on a regular level, is possible. And what I mean by that is people overcome it every day. We don't talk about that though. We talk about all the people that OD. We talk about all the people that are addicted, but we don't talk about people. There's thousands of people right now got their first day, one day sober, right now. So, you just have to understand that concept that recovery is possible. You have to understand that and keep that concept alive, and also that vision for sobriety. I tell, it means a lot. I tell people that are struggling with addiction as well. They come to me, bro, I messed up or whatever. I said, bro, don't beat yourself up. Listen, don't ever stop messaging me asking for tips to get sober. If you're not, I don't care. So don't ever stop thinking about it. Don't ever let that vision of sobriety, like a fulfilling life after sobriety, leave your mental awareness. That's my number one, word of encouragement is develop vision for life after addiction, and just never let it leave. Somebody has to have it, whether it's the person struggling with addiction, or it's the mother or the father, the brother, the son, the brother, sister, whatever. That hope for sobriety, that hope for overcoming addiction is very important. And so you can start there, and guess what? You can do it for free using your imagination, and it's free.
Absolutely. Well, we've really appreciated you coming in and talking to us today. As we are ending, where can people find you? What are you working on? Where can we get your book?
So the book is called 7 Steps from Addiction to Sobriety, and it's on Amazon right now. Also, so Hardaway Learning. The name will be in the show notes or whatever. Hardaway Learning. So on every single platform, that's my name. The email my business email as well, hardawaylearning@gmail. Hardaway Learning on IG, TikTok, Facebook. Those are the primary sources of communication that, I spend some time in the direct messaging, but the personal email, hardawaylearning@gmail, is a great way to contact me. And my book, 7 Steps from Addiction to Sobriety, is on Amazon right now, also at hardawaylearning.store. So everything Hardaway Learning, hardawaylearning.store. I do the autograph copies and I send them out myself. And also I have started a online community. It's called Hardaway Living. So that personal growth and self-development that I was talking about, I actually decided to create an online community, and it has different categories in there: fitness, diet, of course, active addiction. There's also a category I have not been able to work a lot on, which is addiction support for loved ones. And that one I have, which is going to be similar to what you guys are doing here for loved ones specifically that have loved ones addicted. So it's at the onset of the building of the community, and right now it's free lifetime access. So I'm trying to get as many people in there, as possible. And that's school.com, SKOOL.com/Hardaway Living. And right now we're doing a 30-day challenge of personal growth and self-development challenge right now. So I'm trying to get my courses created right now. So I'm trying to keep everybody engaged. And we got some 30-day challenges for, I'm working hard, and I'm trying to, I'm thinking the easy stuff, 30-day challenges, and we're doing some self-awareness, spreading some love messages, giving ourselves 5 pats on the back and doing one fun thing a week. So for the challenge. So we got some fun stuff over there, and that's school.com/Hardaway Living.
Great. Well, it looks like we've put a lot of those links in the chat for people that are here with us live. And of course, the playback will be on our website at some point. But we really appreciate you joining us today, and hopefully we can partner with you again in the future here at Mothers Against Addiction. Just to everybody that's listening, we encourage you to come and join us. We have these guest speaking engagements every week on a Saturday, 10 a.m. Central Time, always via Zoom, always free. Lots of topics. We have topics such as today, where people are sharing their personal story and advice. We also sometimes have professionals that come along and share educational type topics, coping mechanisms, grief, things along those lines. Mothers are always welcome as well to join us in one of our Monday Mothers Shares. We are moving that up. It'll be 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can find all of that on our website to keep the conversation going. We really encourage you to utilize our forum as well as our Monday Mothers Shares. So we wish you all a wonderful, happy rest of your Saturday, and look forward to connecting with you and sharing your stories more. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.